Welcome to Bets on the Future, where we highlight the various career paths in the electrifying metals world. From the vehicle you ride in to the bridge holding it up, metals are everywhere. Why not in your career too? I'm Jennifer Betts, a metals industry veteran with almost 20 years experience, here to highlight these incredible career paths as told by the women who are living them. We have an incredible guest, CEO and co-founder of VALIS Insights, Emily Molstad. Driven by her passion for sustainability and love of material science, Emily quickly found her home within the metal recycling industry. She built the foundation of her technical experience at WPI's Center for Resource Recovery and Recycling, CR3. But her career in the world of recycled materials was kicked into gear in 2019. That year, she traveled across the United States, visiting countless facilities to learn the ins and outs, but most importantly, the needs of the metal recycling industry. This led Emily, along with her co-founder Caleb, to found VALIS, a software startup dedicated to delivering the solutions that are needed to ensure the optimal processing of recycled metals and creation of a circular economy. The VALIS team is committed to bringing Industry 4.0 capabilities that support the stability and profitability of metal recyclers and maximizes the recovery of material from the past to meet the demands of the future. Emily centers on leading with compassion and enjoys creating a supportive, collaborative environment that drives success for VALIS teammates, customers, and partners. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I hope you will too. As everyone can see, or if you're listening, you can probably hear in the background that we are not in our normal Zoom environment. We are actually in person, live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Loving it.
At the ISRI 2024, and although I'm saying ISRI in a few days, spoiler alert, it won't be ISRI anymore. I'm joined by the CEO of VALIS Insights, Emily Molstad. So I'm very honored that you're here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. And I'm very curious to learn a little bit more about your background, how you fit into the metals world, and I know a little bit about your background, so I'm very excited to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. Just excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I kind of wish we could have, picked this up and moved it over to your booth, but your booth is very busy right now.
A little smaller than this too, but it's been fun, a fun morning. Yeah, yes. A lot of folks visiting.
Yes. For those that are listening / also watching, just give us like a brief rundown of what your company does and how it kind of relates into the metals world.
Yeah, absolutely. So at VALIS Insights, we're really focused on developing software solutions for the recycling value chain. And what we mean when we say that is recycling facilities, right? So processing like auto shred facilities where there's downstream separation, for example, with XRF sorters. All of that equipment is generating data, and that data has so much potential to really inform what the material quality is, how that material should be processed, and what we are doing is are enabling our customers to tap into that data and extract really high value insights. Right, so understanding, how do certain process changes impact the quality of the metals that you're now producing? How can you trace that quality and all that information throughout the entire process, back to the suppliers that you're working with, so you can really refine your procurement strategy, and then forward to the customers that you're selling that material to minimize the risk of claims, to build and strengthen those relationships, right? Like the perspective we have is software solutions should augment and enhance your process, right? We're not replacing the very human aspect of the relationships with your customer or with your suppliers, but we're making it easier to do your job by giving you all the data at your fingertips to make those decisions. So we've been really focused on auto shred facilities to date, and we are also expanding to helping on mills and on the melt side, as our goal is to not just optimize at a single facility, but across facilities and making that process integrated. And so you can learn from the results that your customers are getting or from the actions that are being taken on the supplier end and just really bringing it full circle to fully enable that circular economy for metals and the success of these recycling facilities.
I think it's pretty incredible what you're doing, because for those that may not be aware,
of how metals get recycled. It's been a pretty archaic process for a few decades at this point. There are some listeners that follow along on this podcast that are further along in the metal supply chain that are more, the service centers, the OEMs, they consume the finished product, right? The auto shred that you're talking about, when your end of life goods like your washer and dryer, your automobile are done. They tend to go to a metal recycling facility and then they enter an automobile shredder. And so this is where your software comes into play, where you can help those operators capture the data, because think about all the metals and also non-metallics that come out of that equipment that hasn't been captured before. And I'm going to look at my watch, but I mean, it is 2024. It is a little while that this hasn't really gotten that deep in technology before. So it is really cool. So I kind of want to go back a little bit. Like, how did you come up with this? Like, I mean, did you have a connection in the industry? Like, where did this idea come from?
Yeah, my background and sort of the background for our team is kind of interesting. So I'm a materials engineer by training and education, right? I have a master's in material science and engineering. I attended Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I still live and where we're headquartered. And while I was in undergrad, I got connected to the Center for Resource Recovery and Recycling, the CR3. And it's a really interesting research institution because it's what's called, I'm about to throw out a lot of acronyms, but we all have acronyms. It's an NSF IUCRC, which what that means is it's the National Science Foundation Industry University Collaborative Research Center.
Okay.
So companies that have challenges that they're looking into, but they can't, justify bringing on like a dedicated team to do research within that space, they can now partner and collaborate with this university research center to look into different processing technology and different material trends and opportunities that can then be commercialized by providing that insights to those companies. And so I started there as a research assistant, as an undergrad. I was really interested in recycling. My passion is sustainability. I love metals. Right? I originally kind of started out in like air and water, but I just like the tangibleness of metals. And I was doing research in electronic waste recovery, and I got connected with my colleague Sean Kelly, who was doing his PhD in automotive aluminum recycling technology. So his entire PhD was looking at all of the different sensor-based sorter technology that's out there to separate aluminum into its alloys, twitch into its alloy components, which is really needed in order to upgrade that post-consumer aluminum. And in going through that process, realized that these sensor-based sorters are generating a huge wealth of data that's essentially getting thrown away, right? It's not easy to access that data, and now we're seeing that is becoming easier, right? There are capabilities, APIs to tap into that data, and that's what we leverage. But it's also incredibly valuable when you bring that information into the broader context of operations, right? So how does that relate to production shift information around how many pounds you're putting into that sorter, who is the supplier, the original feedstock, container or bunker, how does that relate to the quality check that you're doing after you're sorting? And so that's where we are today. Back then we were very much focused on, are there sorting algorithms that we could develop? And after Sean finished his PhD, he went on to found a company called Solvis Global, and I joined as an intern. That's kind of where we were, prototyping proof of concept, seeing what we could do. And Solvis hired my co-founder Caleb, who's our CTO, and he's all things data science and machine learning. And so I like to joke that VALIS is really the merging of our brains, right? I have the metals and the material science and engineering, and then he has the data science and machine learning, and bringing that together to say, there's a huge opportunity with all this data, and we can drive real value for our customers to help them increase the profitability of their operations. And to the point on, why hasn't this been done before? I think it's really a case of, we recognize that our customers they're good at what they do. It's a great business to be in. They're good at making money. It's just emphasizing that it can be that much better. That when you tap into that information and you leverage it to its full potential, you can learn a lot about your operations. You can learn, the fine tuning of even just, right, we see making a change in the throughput of your system, running it a little bit faster. You'll recover more material, but your purity is going to go down. Or you can slow it down. You can get a really pure, say, copper product, but we're finding, you can have 25%, 30% of that copper ending up in your leftover fraction.
Yikes.
And that's dollars that's being left on the plant floor. And so it's just helping to take it to that next level of really optimizing and bringing it into modern solutions that are needed.
I've had the good fortune of seeing a demo of your software before, and I do also have to say, not only is the technology, the data that you are able to capture very sophisticated, you do make it also very user-friendly. And I do have to give you huge props for that, because the UX, the UI of some softwares that are out there, it's not always intuitive in there. And so I have to commend you on that. It is really cool to see the technology there and being able to actually pull the data out and be able to use it in a very, what seems natural way to figure out what you're looking for out of it. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I can't take any credit for that. That's all our engineering team. They're fantastic. And what really helped with that as well is, in the early days when we were building out this technology, it was exploratory. We were trying to figure out, is there a market for this? How can we be most helpful to this industry? And through that, we had gotten a grant from the National Science Foundation. It's called Innovation Core, or I-Core. And it was in 2019, so pre-COVID, where we got to travel all across the country and just talked to everyone that we could within this industry. So shout out to anyone watching this or listening to this that talked to us way back in 2019 when we were just figuring out the industry, because it was a massive help to learn what's going on at the processing side or at mills or collection yards. What are the challenges that they're facing, and that gave us this full picture of the industry. It taught us the language. It was basically a crash course in recycled materials, learning, right? Zorba, Twitch, all those things that, back then, if you said Elmo to me, I'm going to think of the cartoon of Sesame Street. I'm not going to think of electric motors. And that's helped to shape the product from the very beginning, right? We had that foundation in just getting to know people, meeting people where they are, learning about the specifics of their business, so that way we can tailor this to a product that's helpful and intuitive. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it. And yeah, shout out to our engineering team.
Yeah. It's impressive. And also to the listeners that are not, auto shred aficionados, Zorba and Twitch are ISRI terms that are internationally used, and it references basically the shredder byproducts that are traditionally non-ferrous, aka not steel, not iron. So predominantly aluminum and copper and sticks to a magnet. I'm very oversimplifying.
No, I mean,
here.
It's exactly right.
And those are, that's mainly what your software is trying to help with the downstreams. And the downstreams, again, oversimplifying here, those are the systems that are really trying to help those shredders pull out the non-ferrous in a very, I'd say, consistent way, or a very productive, high efficient way.
Yeah.
To make more money.
Right, exactly.
Right, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, right, it's a case of non-ferrous is 10% of the volume, but more than 50% of the value of those metals that are moving through an operation. And so making those upgrades of processing it a bit further can really increase that value quite significantly. And especially as you're seeing growing demand for that recycled content in North American manufacturing, and a need for those metals to stay here, why not upgrade them and utilize them? But I will say too, we do see plenty of opportunities on the ferrous side, especially on the ferrous shred. with our technology helping customers really track that copper and chromium content, those things that are super impactful for steel quality and value. But yeah, our bread and butter to date has been in the non-ferrous side. I love aluminum.
I do have to say, traditionally my background is on steel making, but the molten aluminum is probably one of the prettiest things you're ever going to see. It's super nerdy, but it is very cool to see in person. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they're huge facilities. I mean, probably definitely not on the order of the steel mills. Those are massive. We've been to a few of those too, but it's always cool to be on site and just see where our metals come from, right? Yes. It's like to joke, it's behind the scenes of the supply chain, but really it's such a critical part of it. It's essential.
Yes. You are doing a lot on the software side, but I do also have to bring up something that's in your booth that is pretty cool to see in person. Well, let me just let you explain it.
Right. So while we've been building out our software capabilities, right, a key piece of information that we're tying in is quality data, right? So typically a processor or processing facility, they will take a 5-gallon bucket from either the feedstock of what they're running into the sorter and then the outputs of that material. And it'll be a quality check, right? So say they're creating a copper product, they'll take a 5-gallon bucket and see, how pure is this copper? Am I seeing contaminants that aren't getting sorted out? But in order to evaluate that, the process we've really seen with our customers is they hand sort it. They're taking each constituent or sort of a fraction of that sample, tearing it, weighing it, writing that down, taking an image, uploading that information. And it's pretty limited in the insights that you can get into that material, and it's very time consuming and can often be human error prone for entering in that data and getting it synced up with any other part of your process. And so what we've developed is a tool we call VALIS. And it is essentially it's going from bucket to box. So we have a green box that you still hand sort out those constituents, but say I take my copper fraction, I put it on the tray, I slide it into VALIS, it will automatically record the weight, take an image, and then it processes that image to get you particle count and particle size distribution, right? So understanding how many fines do you have within this fraction, or what are you in your mediums or larges? And what that can do is all of that information, is automatically recorded, so you don't need to write anything down, you don't need to upload anything, it's just all right there in our application. We tie that back to the processing data that we're getting from the sorter, so you can now see, I ran this sort on this day, and this was the quality that came out of it, and so you can understand, all right, yeah, I'm losing copper on this, or no, actually, the settings I have for this are golden, I should leave it. But it also makes it easier to provide that information to your sales team, right? So they can go in and access that and look at those images that can be passed along to customers. And then, right, capturing the particle size, that's something that we wouldn't be able to do manually, or you're not going to have your technicians sit there measuring. It just wouldn't be economical. But by processing those images, we can help provide insights into, are your fines a lot higher in copper? Is there an issue with your sizing or potentially with your shredding? We can even go as far as to pick up on contaminants like steel bolts in your aluminum, right? So being able to further segment to see, do you need more segregation in your process? Is there maybe something you can do to your shredder to further separate those materials, because the value is only as far as how much you actually get that material separated. So it's really, it makes that capture process a lot faster, more accurate, less error. And then our long-term goal is to continually upgrade that tool into a fully automated process, so you can even take a much larger sample and get a more representative picture of your material.
I think that's a really cool feature to have, not just at the supplier aspect of it, coming off of an auto shredder and essentially doing an essay on that. But I also think, I'm thinking of my former purchasing agent mind from a consumer side of things, is that's a great way to do a quality check on suppliers coming in, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you can just, kind of spot check as things come in, and now you've got the data documented in an electronic form with the photos, the exact data information. You can point to 3 spots in the load.
Right. Yeah.
And there you go. Like it's a lot more concrete than saying I picked out 3 buckets and I hand sorted it. It's a little bit harder to push back on some things.
Right.
Versus this is from a very scientific process.
Yeah. I mean, we're scientists and engineering nerds at heart, so that's how we look at challenges. Is what's the right amount of information that you need, and what can you do with that information? And so looking to both empower those on the processing side, having that quality data at hand, understanding for say I've run material through a process 15 times, and now those 15 runs are now accumulated in this bunker. We can give you insight into how many pounds have you actually sampled from that. What is the summary of all of those samples together to give you a clear picture on what's really within that bunker, and that you can communicate forward to your customers to make sure that you're minimizing that risk of claims or any misunderstanding on what the quality of that material is. But then on the purchasing side at these consumer facilities, really having that confidence in the material they're buying.
It's a pretty cool feature that, again, I'm still somewhat surprised that it hasn't been developed thus far. But to your point, the shredders have been efficient in what they've had available to them thus far. But I think this is just going to make them that much more efficient, being able to just dial things in. Because obviously, we hit $4 in copper recently, right? Like switching one little notch can really make that kind of difference for them.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, one run, one shift, tens of thousands of dollars, depending on that how fast you're running that material, and it makes a huge difference.
Yes, it does. For those that are interested in getting into this industry, do you have any sort of advice on, now that you've been in it for several years now, as an entrepreneur, knowing what you know now, any advice for those?
As far as getting folks into the industry, I think it's both a case where if you have an interest in sustainability and just really cool industries doing important, impactful work, to reach out to folks in the sense that when we were going through that I-Corps process and we were learning, we talked to over 150 people, and it's not like we knew those people. We were cold emailing and calling and just reaching out and getting to know different people across the industry. And so my biggest advice there is just reach out. Don't feel like you're ever bothering someone, and just I found that most people in this industry are really eager to share with young people and express the work that they're doing and how young people can get involved and new people can get involved in the industry. And then for us, we really prioritize outreach in other forms. Caleb and I both teach a guest lecture at WPI every fall semester to a class of first-year students that are taking a course called Recycle the World.
Yes.
And that covers all material streams, and so we come in with a focus on the metal side and different software applications. Right. So just thinking about software engineers, maybe don't view the recycling industry as a space for them to get into, but there's so many awesome opportunities. So it's a mix of that outreach on our side, which I think the industry has really been growing in and doing a lot of work to showcase how critical the work we're all doing is. I think that main advice is find a mentor, find someone that you can turn to, you can ask questions, and can build those connections for you as well. There's so many opportunities, right? There's jobs in really every kind of sector or different skill set within this space.
I think that's a really great answer. And also, I think the course that you just mentioned should be at every school. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that sounds wonderful.
That's how I got into it. It was the course I took as a first year student at WPI, and loved it. It was a project-based course. At that time, the project I had worked on was actually in red mud recovery. So how can you extract the metals that are still left over in that bauxite residue?
Yeah.
So not necessarily on the recycling side, but still waste minimization and valuable material recovery. But yeah, it just opens your eyes to what it takes from a circular economy perspective. So on remanufacturing, recycling, the whole 9 yards. And I'm also biased too, right? Being a materials engineer, I always joke that like anything you're really doing just always ties back to materials engineering anyways, because you're building something out of a material. Yeah, right.
Like
everything in here came from some degree from a materials engineering side and perspective. So having that understanding, and I also just think it's important to have that background to really value what you have, right? Like when I'm driving my car, I know what goes into, when it reaches its end of life, hopefully very far from now because I just paid it off, but what goes into that, and it makes you appreciate the things you have a lot more.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I know your booth is very busy, but I just want to say a huge thank you for coming over, sharing your background, your story. I think it's really incredible that you found that course that was obviously very pivotal in your career, and that you've branched out on your on this journey, bringing a lot of technology, much needed. Thank you. In this industry. So thank you so much for hopping on this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily.